Okay, I'm gonna do a quick video of the vintage air installation on my 1964 Dodge W200 Power Wagon 4-wheel drive. A lot of you that know these trucks are gonna say it looks like a 67, which it is titled as a 64. The truck was in an accident, I believe, in like 1969, and the owner took the cab and bed off of a 67 and put it on this truck, which I personally prefer this body style. So I'm kind of glad that happened, but you basically have the bones of a 64, and then the outside is a 67. And I guess the big difference between those trucks is the Poly 318. This one has the Poly 318, as you can see here. Polyhead 318, original engine, been rebuilt one time. And let me just tell you, first of all, if you have a Poly engine, I'm going to show you what you're going to run into with this bracket kit. This is the 318 kit that Vintage Air sells with the alternator bracket. As you can see, it attaches there on the water pump. Got the alternator in it, compressor bracket, I should say. And then it also comes with an alternator bracket. Normally your alternator would be mounted here, but it couldn't be done because of the poly heads on this engine. So what I had to do is, and this was probably the only modification really. And it's not rocket science, it just takes a little bit of lining things up. But I had to keep the original alternator pulley, and there is a 1-inch spacer back here. If you can see that spacer there, that's between the head and this bracket. This bracket was wider than 1 inch, so I had to machine it down to where it was 1 inch wide, and so it serves as a spacer as well as mounts the alternator. Everything lines up great. And also I had to space out just a hair right here. If you can see that washer right there, I had to put that in place to, just to get the belts and all to line up how I wanted them. But that's pretty much it if you have a Poly 318. Everything else is going to be standard as far as the mounting the compressor and the alternator. If you have a regular 318, just ignore that. If you don't have these poly heads, then you'll be good to go. It'll be a turnkey install. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Paul Horton's Welder series, which is on YouTube. He's the only one I could find with somewhat of a vintage AC install on his D100, which is the same body style as this, and he helped guide me a little bit on his videos. I went with the same unit that he suggested, which is a Gen 4 Magnum. It's the top of the line, which is nice because you have all electronics, no vacuum, that kind of thing, and you have a legitimate heat, defrost, and AC. Let me just show you the inside. Well, I'll tell you what, let me show you everything here. I have a dual pulley system. You can see everything lines up good. I ended up doing, fuel lines. Everything was right here. I was doing all this anyway. I did fuel lines, fuel filter while I was here, and I ended up doing a water pump because my water pump had a drip, which you can see I got a new water pump. All new hoses. I did have to go with a different radiator hose like you will see in these trucks because I had to arch it up to clear the compressor. The stock radiator hose is not going to clear that compressor. I did have to install a new radiator. I did not want to because I like the vintage look, but mine had several cracks I found out that needed attention, and you can get the correct radiator online for about $800. This is a driver, it's not a show truck, so I opted for the aluminum radiator, which was $250, made by Champion Radiators. As you can see, I think the number is 6619 for these trucks, but it's easy to find. And you can just see, you know, my hoses, from the condenser here, I didn't cut anything. I just routed the top hose out the top here. There was already a space for it, and then the bottom, if you can see down there, I just kind of routed it underneath the radiator mount. And it comes out the bottom and goes up to the dryer. You can see I did a trinary switch, even though I do not have an electric fan at this time. That way I'll have the option if I need to add one, but I don't believe I'm going to need to, because it's a constant drive fan. It doesn't have a clutch or anything. I believe it's gonna pull air across the condenser just fine. But I went with the condenser the same width as my radiator, mounted it right in front with the included brackets. I ordered everything from Vintage AC. It's a 22-inch unit that matches the size of the width of the radiator. You can see how I mounted it here. And reading online, they say to mount these things as close to the radiator as you can, which I attempted to do. And it came out nice. I mean, it looks good from the front. You know, I was worried about that aluminum radiator too, but I mean, with the condenser in front of it, it hides that radiator, and you know, looks pretty stock. And if you just want to look at my hose routing, you know, like I said, the top hose comes to the compressor here, and then the other compressor hose goes into the cab, of course, to the evaporator unit. And then you got the dryer hose coming out of the cab and to the bottom of the condenser. I think everything else is pretty straightforward. Yeah, I think I told you I changed my water pump. That was no big deal. Also, I had to put a new lower radiator hose because of this aluminum radiator, but these flex hoses work fantastic. The bottom one is a Daco, which I actually like the Daco better because they don't even think about kinking that I can see. The top one is a gauge, which is nice as well, but it just doesn't seem to hold its shape as good as the Daco. That's just what I've experienced. And my wiring, you can see where it came through the firewall. I just put a grommet right here, and you have the wires coming to the battery on this side. Very simple. This is a circuit breaker. It's already pre-wired from Vintage Air. I just put a self-tapping screw. You run your red to positive, and there's two white wires on the same harness. Run those to negative, done deal. And the only other wire is a blue wire, which you can see it splits at the grommet. I ran mine around the back, and it goes to the dryer here, there, the trinary switch, I should say. And then from the trinary switch, you also run a wire. You can see where it came back through here, and I ran it up here. And that's right there where that's going to plug into the compressor, which is right here. I haven't plugged it in yet because it has not been vacuumed and recharged. I just did the install. The heater works great. Everything works fine. I'm going to send it to my mechanic tomorrow. He will vacuum down the system and charge it, and hopefully we will have cold AC at that time. But do not plug this in. Do not plug the compressor in until you are absolutely ready to do the vacuum and recharge, because you will probably burn up your compressor or your clutch if it engages with no Freon in there. So I think that covers the outside install. One more thing, this is the heater valve. You can see how the heater hoses run from the water pump right here, and then from the manifold. The one on the manifold side, you have a heater control valve, one wire that goes through the firewall to the unit inside. This is what will control your heater inside. It will let the hot antifreeze run through the heater core inside if you want heat. And that's just that simple. But let's go inside and look. Like I said, this is a Gen 4 unit. Thanks again to Paul Horton, because this is what he put in his, and he showed me that it would fit. So it does fit very nicely in here. And it's the best one that Vintage Air has.